Hi everyone. So sorry we are not meeting today to go over how to do the first two worksheets of the chapter 4 chapter from your textbook on atomic structure and subatomic particles. So I'm just going to go over a few things with you today about the worksheets and then just kind of do a review of the chapter 4 notes that you should have taken notes on. Basically everything that I'm going to go over with my students on Tuesday. Okay, so let's get started. So from your notes, you recorded notes on what subatomic particles were and the three main particles that make up an atom. And those are protons, which are positive and have a mass of 1, electrons, which are negatively charged and have no mass, and then neutrons, which are neutral, so there's no charge, but they do have a mass of 1. So how do we then use the elements that are found on our periodic table to figure out the number of each of those subatomic particles? So in the Thursday, Friday folder for week 4, there is this periodic table. If you are able to, I would appreciate if you guys would print this out because this is a very important tool that we use in chemistry, and we're going to be using it for the first time this year with chapter 4. So if you take a look in the middle of this periodic table, you see that you have a few things that are labeled here. One being the atomic structure, the atomic number of an element, and that is always going to be found at the very top of your symbol, which is representing the symbol of that element. Then you have your atomic mass, which is at the bottom, and that is going to be the atomic mass for that particular element, and typically it's going to be an average number for the most part. So in your notes, I believe I gave you guys this structure, and I talked about kind of the same thing that we just went over right now with our periodic table. So you have the atomic number on top, and then you have your mass number on bottom. Now, both of these represent different things. So for example, we have for the atomic number is going to represent the number of your positive protons and the number of your negatively charged electrons. So atoms are neutral, and the reason why we say that they're neutral is because if you have an equal number of protons and an equal number of electrons, because positive and negatives, when you add them together, they should cancel out and equal to 0, hence making the overall charge of an atom neutral. Now, if it isn't neutral, then that means it's an ion, but we'll come back and talk about those in chapter 6. And then for a mass number, it is the number of protons plus your number of neutrons. And the reason why we use those two particles is because both of those particles are the ones with a mass, and therefore, when you add them up, you should get an average mass. So let's go ahead and look at the chapter 4 atomic structure worksheet. I'm going to do a few practice problems with you guys, and then the rest you guys need to do on your own. So let's start off with the first one. So I gave you a couple numbers to kind of help you get started with. The first one is the number of protons. Now, as we talked about right here, we said that the atomic number represents the number of protons and the number of electrons. So kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, if you have an equal number of protons, you must have an equal number of electrons. So that's going to be 25 as well, in order for this atom to be neutral. And because you're able to get the number for both of these particles from your atomic number, we're going to go ahead and write 25 for our atomic number. Now for the mass number, as we talked about, it is protons plus neutrons. So I gave you the number of neutrons, so we're going to go ahead and add the number of protons and the number of neutrons together. And when we do, we get 55. Now we need to figure out what the element is along with its symbol. So this is where your periodic table is going to come in handy. So we use your atomic number to help you to identify your element. And the reason why we use the atomic number and not the mass number is because your atomic number will never change as far as identifying that with an element. If you end up changing the atomic number or the number of protons, then that's going to end up changing the element itself. So think of the atomic number like your fingerprint. No one in the entire world has your fingerprints. Sorry about that. Has your fingerprints, which is one way that they can identify you as you. But if you ever do change your fingerprints, then that's not going to be a way to identify you as being you. So if you change your number of protons, then therefore you're going to end up changing the overall chemical identity of that element, and it will no longer be that element. So we're going to take a look and see if we can find the number with the element with the atomic number of 25. So you always want to read left to right for this. So here we are at manganese. So we're going to put Mn because that's the symbol for manganese. And then we're going to write the name, which is at the very top. We're going to write it to the left of this dashed line. So manganese. And then the number that goes here will be our mass number. Okay, so that's if I gave you the number of neutrons. Now, if you take a look at the fourth one down, I did not give you the number of neutrons, but I did give you the atomic number and the mass number. So like we talked about up here, whatever number is here for our atomic number, that's going to be the same number for the protons and the electrons. So let's go ahead and write 39 for both. Now we have to figure out the number of neutrons. So if we go back to our notes, we wrote down that when you add protons and neutrons together, that gives you your mass number. But if you were ever trying to figure out the number of neutrons, then it's going to be your mass number minus the number of your protons. So we do have the mass number. We were able to identify the number of protons. So 89 minus 39 gives you 50. So now we need to look for the element that has the atomic number of 39. So if we're reading left to right, and there it is, yttrium. So we're going to write the letter Y for the symbol, and then write yttrium for the element name, and then we're going to put 89 for the mass number. Okay, so that's how you fill out the first table. If you go to the second video that is labeled isotopes, I will talk about how to work out this chart along with the next worksheet.